Hello and welcome everyone to this new episode on the leadership. Today we're going to talk about the power of influence and how it affects the upcoming leaders and how it's going to affect the team members. I'm Wajid Ali, live from Toronto, Canada. And with me today is a special guest, my mentor, and I call him an expert on the leadership and sales leadership. He's been in the industry for many years. Uh, I would give him the opportunity to introduce himself, and then we will go into the actual format of the show. So, welcome on stage, Dave. You're live, and you can just introduce yourself, and then we can just go into the actual session.
Sure. My name is David Bell. I'm a director of sales for a large temporary utility company in North America. I got to know Waj over the years because we worked together. So I was so lucky to get to work with Waj, and I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I'm just happy to be here, talk sales and leadership.
Thank you, thank you, Dave. Truly appreciate you're here with us today, and I'm sure it will be an exciting session, a very informative session for the listeners, for the audience, and I'm sure we'll repeat it in the future again. We'll bring more sessions. But for the audience, if you're watching it live or even if you're watching it as a recorded session, make sure that you leave your feedback for both myself and for Dave. And we would like to hear from you and we would like to improve if there's anything that you want us to improve. So, Dave, I will start with you. If you could briefly describe about your experience, how many years of experience overall in general you have, and where did you start your career as on a high level, if you would like to share with the audience.
Um, yeah, I mean, years and years ago, while I was drifting, figuring out what I wanted to be in life, because I guess sales is probably one of those roles that you never think of. I never thought of anyhow. Um, you, Anyways, I never thought of it as a career. I never thought of it as anything. And I actually got told by these guys that I worked for while I was in high school. They kept saying to me, "You got to be in sales. You should be in sales."
Right.
And so I said, "Oh, what does that mean? And what does that do?" So I actually did door-to-door sales for like 3, 4 years. And
Okay.
that was a real great, I call that my university. It really helped me
Right.
understand how to look at people, talk to people, understand where people are coming from. And take a lot of rejection. Door-to-door sales
Right.
is full of rejection and going on from there. And then I got into industrial type sales, and through people that I knew, I got invited into a couple companies in the oil field industry, selling large equipment and remanufacturing of large equipment. And I really started to understand, I think, at that level of the idea of service, right? Like that sales wasn't something I was doing to them, it was something I was helping them through. They had a problem and I wanted to genuinely help. And I was lucky. I had a lot of good customers that became kind of mentors to me that were like, if you really help me with this, we could take this to the next level, and we could order more, or we could do it faster, stronger, better. So I carried that on for a long time, and then I was a period of time with a major multinational corporation, and I had the opportunity to move into operations, and I did that for 3 years. And I think that was like, if you're in the type of sales like an industrial sale, um, what do they call those old dances in the old days, Sadie Hawkins, where you trade places, where the
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you trade places and you sit in that location. And we're extremely successful because for two reasons, right? Is one was I was bringing a sales attitude towards an operational role where I was trying to solve problems and fix the problems. But at the other side of it, I really got to see how the other half lived, and the challenges in running an operations for a large industrial company. And so I took that, and then ended up where we ended up meeting each other at a
Right.
company doing large power sales,
Yeah.
and really trying to again understand the industry. And I think that's where I probably came into learning mostly about how to truly understand the customer's problem through asking intelligent
Right.
questions, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
being informed and being studious and
Right.
really being curious. And we both had a mentor there,
Right.
Bob,
Yeah.
fabulous man,
Yeah.
that really opened my eyes to something. Like every time I talked about Bob, I thought he was. So I was like, man, is he in my brain? This is what I've been thinking.
Yeah, it's
And
phenomenal, man. I truly understand working with him. I think I didn't work with him for that long. I guess you worked with him more than
uh,
I did, but he was like a university in himself, right?
really, yeah, probably the most genuinely what how do you say this? He was probably the most genuinely curious person I've ever met in my life. And that curiosity, and he helped bring it out to say it's okay to be curious and it's okay to tell a customer you don't know something, you don't
Right.
understand it, right?
Right.
And can
To
you
be
help me
authentic,
understand?
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and to confirm, because sometimes customers have a hard time communicating what they're really trying to tell you. And
Right.
it's okay to come back and confirm that, like,
Yeah.
okay, so is this really what you're saying? Is this is the goal? Okay, this is the objective.
Right.
Perfect. Okay.
Right.
And then being able to challenge them back on that. So in some cases, they'll come back to you that challenges their own objective. And
All
like, well,
right.
if you do
Yeah.
this, then it takes away that objective. Is that okay? Is that an
Yeah.
objective that we can throw out, or is that
Right.
something that we need to deal with? And when I'm working through Bob, I think when the company I was with you, I was promoted 5 times through leadership and sales leadership, from a sales rep to business development to a business development manager to a sales manager to a sector manager to a
Right.
sector leader. Like, so it just kind of grew through there,
Yeah.
all the way up to it grew through there, and we got to work together. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So thank you, Dave, for walking us through on a high level about your career journey. And on that
Mhm.
note, since you have seen a gradual growth in your career as you were
Mhm.
describing, and then you were managing teams, right? So there were people
Sure.
reporting into you, and part of the challenge that we want to help people with, especially the people that are kind of trailblazers, call them, or they're just getting into the leadership roles, right?
Mhm.
Like if you were to go back all these years and you were just about to start, what would you recommend to your younger self as a new leader, right? If you could share some of your thoughts here to help the audience.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, remember that role I was telling you when I went into operations?
Yeah, yeah.
I was like a bull in a what do they go? Bull in a glass house, right? I was
Right.
just, trying to solve everything all at once, and I know how to fix that, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and you know, I I think there's a famous saying, God gave you 2 ears and one mouth. You use them
Oh yeah,
proportionally,
that's
and
right.
so and taking time to absorb that, and really coming from a side of empathy, you know, understanding that sometimes when you're seeing some issue, where maybe the person's having a hard time, or they're challenged at that moment, they're going to take any kind of not necessarily critique, but even any type of advice that you're going to give them as a criticism,
Right.
and that wasn't your intent, right?
Yeah.
Right. But to understand that and to lead with empathy, I think is probably one of the best things you can do as a leader, is always try to put yourself in that person's shoes, understand what they have to say, ask them questions versus give them advice, right? Unsolicited advice is can be very annoying.
Oh
So
yeah, it's
I learned that the hard way, Wedge. I'm
right.
going to tell you, there was a lot of people at the beginning
Yeah.
when I was in my leadership career. They're like, "Who is this guy?" And get him out of my office, right? So,
Yeah, and that's a good point, Dave. I think to your point, learning it the hard way. I guess part of the challenge is, Dave, when you have been through that journey, so maybe you can correct me if I'm just kind of leaning it to somewhere else. But What I was trying to get out of that comment that you made, learning it the hard way, is because when you go into the leadership role, most of the times you get promoted, you become a manager or a director or whatnot, but you don't get sort of a training, or maybe you don't get
Yeah.
attached to a mentor that could kind of walk you through to the first maybe 3 to 6 months of your leadership journey within the organization. I guess it will be really helpful for the organizations if you're promoting a person into a leadership role and you feel like that person has the ability and qualities of being a good leader, but at the same time, to your point, Dave, if that person is not being maybe coached or mentored, then of course there's the thing that you will learn the hard way. But I guess
Mhm.
to be more efficient, more effective way would be to have some kind of coach at the beginning. What are your thoughts, right? How would you
Yeah.
what would you
I,
suggest?
I love what you're saying there because it's also not just, I think, um, not being coached, it's maybe being coached improperly.
Uh-huh.
I, one thing I learned really easy, I learned really quick, and that was through guys like Thomas Hooks. I don't know if you remember Thomas, and
Yeah,
yeah, I never
I
told him
remember.
this, right? And
Yeah,
guys like Bob, you know, and from reading and listening to guys
yeah,
like John Maxwell,
right.
and reading their books,
Yeah,
Paul Lencioni. These guys are all great leaders, right?
right.
Even I love reading historical figures like
Yeah,
Churchill. He's probably my favorite. But
sure.
when you sit back and realize there's a difference between leadership and management, and a lot of times what you're being taught is management,
Sure.
and management is the action of doing things, right?
Yeah.
Leadership's different. And if you lead more, you need to manage less. It's funny dynamic how it works, right?
I love the way you said if you lead more, you would manage less.
And
Can
why'd you
you
know
can you
this?
expand
Because
on
we
this?
worked we worked
Yeah,
so
I
closely
know. We
together.
work
I
together,
hated
but
managing people. I was always be like, guys, don't make me manage you because that's no one's gonna have fun, right?
that's right.
Um, yeah, but yeah, so the lead I think really is there's a couple things, right? And you see all those pictures and icons, but they're true, right? Is where they say, like management is trying to pull them along, and you know and leading is you up the mountain first, right?
Right.
And I think
Right.
that's true. And you know what the best way to do that, I think, is to be vulnerable. And Raj, you and I went through some great experiences together, but I remember standing in a yard with you in the middle of Petawawa, Ontario, and it was like your first month or two, I
Yeah.
can't remember,
Yeah.
right? And and we got there, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a monster job, and we can't
Right.
lose it, right?
That's right.
But I always went back, and you didn't know this job from Adam yet. I mean, you're probably trying to figure out where the car keys were still at, right? But
Yes. Sure.
we sat down, and I'm like, what's your opinion? What's your thoughts? Understanding where they're coming from, right? And saying, okay, how do we proceed with this? This is going to be on you now to get this done and completed. Now, I will always be there, right? To back you up. But
Right.
you have to show that vulnerability so that you will speak up. And that's the big thing for me, I think, is if you come from and if you not lead from authority, because I don't think you can actually lead from authority, but if you manage from authority,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to end up managing no one,
Right.
because they're going to quietly quit on you. But when you lead from empathy and from
Right.
understanding and
Right.
vulnerability, people have a natural inkling to tell you, "Hey, I'm seeing this in the field," and that's what was happening at those times with us.
Right.
Like not with just you, with Maddie,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Michelle, with
With the
all the
team,
team,
right?
Greg.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is they'd be open to say, "I'm seeing this. What is this? I don't know. Let's explore it together."
Right.
And maybe there's something there. Maybe there's not. But the only way we're going to find out is together, right? And so
Yeah.
let's
No,
do
that's
let's do it
that's
together.
that's a great idea because, and I think that's a great concept of leading with empathy and leading with sort of togetherness, and being vulnerable to your point. Because if you have, and the way you're describing it, and I'm kind of expanding a little bit on what you just said here
Mhm.
is if you're a leader and you have people reporting into you, right? They look up to you, right? They look up to you and they feel like and they expect from you that there is somebody who is going to stand at my back if anything goes wrong.
Yeah.
So what you're describing here is, or what you're explaining here is that allow your team to go through the unknowns and allow them to make mistakes while going through that journey,
Right.
while you're standing at their back and kind of mentoring them and educating them through that process, right? As opposed to being much more authoritative and giving them directions. If
Right.
you're doing that, as a leader, then you're not developing your team into future leaders, right? Okay, you can manage them at one point, but they wouldn't become leaders by themselves. So they will always be at that level and they will never grow. So as a
Yeah.
leader, your job is to make other leaders or other people into leadership in a given time frame, right? Because everybody needs to grow. And if you're not giving them that opportunity, then I guess, maybe lack of better term, you're not a visionary leader.
Yeah. Maybe you just don't know, right? And that's the thing too. You still have to have empathy for them.
Right.
It's funny because when we were when we first started, before you were hired, and we were
Right.
building out the whole that whole division, and we were thinking about it, I noticed everybody wanted to have an opinion on it. I'm like, well, where would you get that information? And this is long before there was a team. There was three of us, like
Sure.
across all North America. We had no idea what we're doing. But the thing is, what I learned is that the more that people are trying to tell you that they know exactly what to do and what they're doing, the
Right.
less they really do.
Uh-huh.
It's the ones that just sit down with you and say, "Hey, we're going to learn together." So when you see me be vulnerable and not know the answer, or actually tell a customer in front of you,
Right.
right? I don't know if I understand what that means. Can you
Right.
explain that to me like I'm a 2-year-old? And
Yeah.
they're like, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." And you go
Right.
through it. I'm like, okay, now I get where you're coming from. It's that vulnerability that has to be open so that the your sales reps could come to you, those reps could come to you and ask you anything and feel comfortable in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. All great points, Dave. And I'm glad that we're kind of sort of in a brainstorming session here, sharing it
Hmm.
with the community, with the audience. And, as I said in the beginning, the whole purpose of bringing it up and sharing it with sort of a global audience here, because using LinkedIn, using, Facebook, you're talking to a global community, right? So what we're doing here is we are trying to help others, because if we have gone through some kind of hardships, maybe in through the learning process, and we are making it easier for others, I guess it's a win for us. That's how I look at it, right?
Yeah,
As a human.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
So
I mean, yeah, it's
yeah,
perfect
because
template.
I was listening to one of the one of the I guess very successful businessman, entrepreneur, and the way he described is, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, a successful leader, just learn from the mistakes other have made,
Mhm.
right? So if we have made any mistakes, as you were describing, the hard way, and now we are bringing those learnings and those success stories to share with others,
Mhm.
and people can learn and utilize them, I think we are doing a great service here.
I think it's also equally important as well. Like, I think that's a great point. I think that it's equally important to also take it and say, there's nothing, Churchill used to, I think Churchill's statement was, I failed long enough in order to be successful. Like, the definition of success is failing long enough and keeping your enthusiasm or something like that.
Right, right,
There's nothing wrong. Failure is not fatal. It's not an end result. It's not even a moment in time,
right.
you know. It's just something that happens, and it feels terrible sometimes. I know I've
Right.
felt that way,
Yeah.
right? But it's okay. It's going to make what you have a choice in this moment what to do with that. Make you stronger, make you better. And if you can do that with your team openly, they'll learn to do that too.
That's very true. That's very true. It just reminded me, I guess, Simon Sinek once, he was saying, he was talking to a podcast or maybe in an interview, and he said that, to your point, David's, he was not calling it failures, he was calling it fall or fell, like how many times you fell and then you get up, right? So it's not that you're failing, it's that you're falling and then you're getting up back. So it shows your grit, your resilience, and that's how you turn into, eventually you'll turn into sort of a leadership, right?
Yeah, when you really think back on your life, and not just with business or work
Sure.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But when you really think back on your life and think about the things that you have learned that are key, pivotal, in like things that are like branded into your brain, I bet you can list two of your successes, but you don't have enough fingers and toes to count how many you learned from your mistakes,
True.
right?
That's true.
And
That's right.
you got to
Absolutely.
do that in life. It's even, you have children, you know
Yeah.
what it's like. I
Yeah.
mean, we can't protect them from everything. Eventually, we have to let them go, right? And
Sure.
what's better to
Yeah.
to to, to give them the tools to be successful, right? Because we can't guard them for the hardships of life and too much,
Absolutely.
you
And
know.
if you don't allow them to face the realities, right? If you don't allow them, you become too protective, even with, to your point, within your personal life with your kids and
Mhm.
stuff, you are not allowing them to grow. They will remain, even if they grow physically, but mentally they will still remain dependent and kids. So to your point, it's that vulnerability and that opportunity to let them face the problems. You can stay behind them, you can be at their back, but let them face it and let them make their own choices, and then they get back to you, and you just tell them that, hey, I'm here to support you, even if you've made mistakes, right? And that's what they need from you, right?
Yeah. And it's like anything else. I mean, what do you do after you have a mistake? You have
Right.
two things you can do. You can cry about it and you can get upset about it. And maybe you need that release, and that's fine,
Yeah.
right? But if you do it too long, that's a problem. And if you don't, right? If you don't take that time to investigate what you could have done better, like you know this because you worked with me, but we
Yeah.
would sit down and we'd be like, man, we shouldn't have said that, or I don't think he understood that. I shouldn't have said it that way. And we picked that apart. But I would say it about me too, right? And I think that
Right.
gave you the openness to come to me and say, yeah, maybe I should have. Like,
Yeah.
it's probably. And the other person on the other side is like, Dave, it wasn't that big of a deal. Nobody even noticed, right? It's like, okay, well, so it's not being hard on yourself. It's that whole Kaizen mentality, that whole you're trying to find new ways to build yourself back up. And that's what you're doing. Like a drill sergeant.
Read or in a leadership role, right? And you come as across as an authentic self of Dave Bell, right? Or whoever that person is. But if you're being authentic and you're being open, that the comment that you made earlier about, if you don't understand anything, you can just openly tell your customer that, hey, can you help me understand the thing that you just said, because I feel like I didn't understand that thing. Do you think, how much does it goes in building that relationship, that rapport, maybe credibility?
Let's dissect that a little bit. So I think when you're talking to a C-suite, you better be prepared.
Sure.
Right? You have a limited amount of time. You have to be prepared. So if you're asking them, like, what does
Right.
probably not a good start to a vice president of General Electric, right? You
Absolutely.
have to do your research beforehand. And so I just
Absolutely.
want to make that kind of clear on that side.
That's a good point. Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, so you have to do that. But and sorry, I forgot your question. Yeah.
So my question was, if you were to talking to your customer
Mhm.
And let me rephrase it. So how could you build your rapport and credibility? What is a quicker way of building that rapport or credibility with your customer?
Yeah, and I think people are always looking for a tactic there. And I
Yeah,
don't think it, and you've heard this before, so I'm going to say it again, right? And do you know what I'm going to say?
I don't want to guess. Yeah,
Okay. Protect your ethos.
right,
There's a great football movie, right? Um, oh my goodness, Friday Night Lights, right?
right.
Clear eyes, open heart, can't lose, right? You've done your
Okay,
research, you've done everything, you prepared for this meeting. If you've done all that work and you truly are out to help your customer, not to try to do something to them, but to help them through their problem, right? You
right,
can't lose. Now, you might lose a sale, right? You might not get the order. You might do this. But the other thing but you've done everything within your own ethic and your own ethos to do that. And it's weird because customers will take you down this, not on purpose, but they'll take
Mhm.
you down this way of trying to make you, not to play with your ethic or to play
Right,
with your ethos. And they'll say things like, "Well, do I really need to have 6 of those? Well, what happens if one breaks?"
right.
Well, why would one break? Well, because it's equipment made by people. That
Yeah,
happens, right? I'm not saying it will happen on your job site, but it does happen. And so if you're doing everything, let me ask you what happens. And if they say, "Hey, if it gets there in 2 hours afterwards and it breaks, it's no problem." Oh, okay. I misjudged the urgency of that. And therefore you only need
right.
5, right?
Yeah, fair
But
enough.
if they come back to you and say, "Well, it better not break," why? What happens? And then you go through a long conversation and say, "Because it'll cost me about $10 million."
Right,
Ah, okay. This is something we need to manage. Let's manage
right,
that risk with you. And here's why we're going to manage it this way. So having that true goal of understanding what that customer's need is, the true need, not like their true why this is happening or we're even having this discussion,
sure.
and always shooting for that target, right? In being in that mind ethic, right? And being in your
Yeah,
ethos,
yeah,
you can't lose,
fair
right?
enough. No, you really explained it really well. I think your point is while going through this process, right, you may end up losing a sale, which is okay, right? But you're helping your customer towards the right solution that suits him. Maybe at some, to your point, as we used to talk, like you can't help them in everything. So just be open, be authentic in the things that you could help them, right?
Hmm.
Right. So to your point, you may end up losing some of the sale opportunity, but that's okay because you're building up for a long-term relationship, right?
Hmm.
And for you, for an organization or for a person, having your credibility, having your rapport, I think is more valuable than just a one-time sale.
Yeah, but and again, I agree with all that, right? But also having it from like you when we were talking before we did this podcast. Sorry, I don't mean to out
Yeah.
you here. And what you were saying, I thought was really nice, beautiful. Right? You want to help people. That's why you're doing this, right?
Right.
Um, if you're always trying to do that,
Yeah.
there's no tactic you need.
True.
There's nothing you can say to me that and your enthusiasm doesn't have to be, you know, y- y- like what most people think of salespeople. Yeah, I'm excited, right? It could just be that you're really trying to get to the bottom of this and making sure that you're doing the best for them, right?
Yeah.
When
Sure.
they see that, there's no word that can substitute that. They
That's right.
feel it. It's a
Yeah.
the definition of sales is a transference of feeling.
Very well said, Dave. I guess, the part of the I know we're just kind of heading into the last couple of minutes of our show here. But I guess part of the challenge is that not many sales leaders, I would call them leaders, maybe managers, not many sales managers or leaders, they understand this. They push their sales teams to a point, but they don't guide them in a way that you're talking here. So I guess there is kind of a disconnect in overall in the industry, and that's causing problem. Like if you go to most of the customers, they wouldn't want to meet salespeople, because for them salespeople are not, I guess, lack of the better term, not genuine every time. They just try to sell, but they just don't try to be empathetic in some cases, not always. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is there needs to be some sort of coaching or leadership mindset or mindset shift that could help their team members to understand what is the right way of approaching the sales function. Am I able to put my point across to you, Dave, or do you understand what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah, I think, like putting on the other hat, because I've managed sales managers as well before, and
Yeah.
in doing that is they need to be guided in that as well. It doesn't change. And
Yes,
here's the
that's right.
beauty about if you're a sales rep and your manager doesn't get what you're doing, you don't need to have people reporting to you to be a leader. I learned that where we worked together as a business
Yeah.
development manager,
Right.
right? Nobody reported to me as a business development manager. Now, we worked together. I worked with the sales team to help them build out their business, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't, they didn't report to me. I wasn't their manager. I didn't do their expense reports
Yeah.
or have meetings with them. I would just go on sales calls and help them through a situation. And I realized, I'm like, wow, nobody's talking to these reps this way. It's like, man, you like I just come out of it and say, man, you did a really good job, but do you think we could do this? And what do you think about this? And they're like, why are you asking my opinion? They were kind of looking to be told what to do. And I'm like, no, well, let's work this through together. I mean, you put a lot of effort to get this sales call. You put a lot of effort to get here. Help me help you. I like, what is it? They're
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
help me help you, right? It's yeah,
Right.
I would say that, but you can always start by leading yourself, because it's a funny thing when you do that is people around you will notice, you know,
Absolutely.
they'll,
Absolutely.
they'll
So,
and they'll be attracted to that.
yeah. Well, I love when you say this, Dave. I really enjoyed working with you. So, I think just in the interest of time, because we were just taking it for 30 minutes today,
Hmm.
we can just say goodbye to the audience here, and then we may get together again for another session.
Anytime you
But
need,
I
pal.
truly appreciate your time and really enjoyed this session with you. Thank you again, Dave.
Awesome, man. I love seeing you. Take care of
Yeah.
your family.
Thank
Be
you.
good to yourself. All
Yeah.
right.
Bye.
Bye.